Hi everyone, hope you have an amazing day. This is FC with CappersDirect.com here to talk to you guys and bring you guys a first look into this big upcoming pay-per-view event this weekend. January 21st, we have UFC 283. Guys, this is the first pay-per-view of 2023 in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Currently, there's 15 fights on the card, 2 title fights, 2 Brazilians in the title fight. We have Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal, and we have Figgy versus Moreno. Again, guys, January 21st, this is going to be your UFC Cappers Direct first look into the main card. Let's get into it. All right, so let's get into your first fight preview breakdown. All right, guys, coming at you from the heavyweight division, we have Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal. All right, guys, we're going to look at the Glover side first. Glover is 43 years old, and if you've watched Glover fight, he's changed his style up throughout the years. Before he came out as a brawler, he was known as Brazil as a really amazing boxer who had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it was always in his back pocket, but he was always knocking people out. There was a visa issue. He got into the UFC very late in his career, so for him to continue in the UFC and have success, he had to learn how to adapt, how to not put his chin out there, how to not get in some of these wars and take people down and either go to ground and pound or finish him with a submission. He's known as a submission ace. That's something, I mean, the Alex Pereira went to Glover Teixeira to learn how to grapple because he knew that that possibility against Izzy would come about. He knew that that possibility in the UFC is going to happen. He's going to have to fight grapplers eventually. So he's there with Glover. This is the guy he chose because Glover has shown the intelligence to change his style up in a successful way to be more grappling based and won a championship with it, won a title. I mean, the guy's 43 years old. He just got finished losing the title. And we'll talk about that loss a little bit. Looking at Glover, super hungry. He's, like I said, he's become a grappler, but I worry about that pressure that he has. I mean, this is in Brazil. He's 43 years old. I know Glover himself is like, hey, I'm 43. I'm living with some extra time. No one is supposed to be the champion at 43, right? So I'm doing things. I'm doing some amazing things. So I can see where some people are like, there's no pressure on him because he can lose. But I'm telling you guys, when it's in Brazil, when it's right there in your home country, people are going to be screaming your name. Everybody wants you to win. Everyone's going to ask you for tickets. All fans, friends, everybody. It's nerve-wracking. It is hard to fight in your hometown. Derek Lewis has done it many times, and every time I have to hear new crazy stories about what happened this time to stress him out even more. So I just don't see Glover getting away from the pressure and getting away from that pressure of being in Brazil and needing to win this fight. Again, though, the biggest problem with Glover that I have, other than his age, is the fact that in looking at his last fight with Yuri, man, it possibly could have taken years out of Glover's life. I mean, Glover got submitted. This guy is a BJJ ace who it's hard to submit, doesn't get submitted. Obviously, he was hurt. He was tired, and Yuri just grabbed him. And Yuri was hurt. Yuri was tired. It was a grueling match for both of them. And, I mean, Glover lost that matchup, and that's why he's here now, 43 years old. So he has the grappling edge, though. Like I told you, he changed his style up to be more grappling-based so he can have longevity in his career, and he's done it successfully, having won a title with that same style. Now let's get into Jamahal. Jamahal is 31 years old. He's going to be taller. He's going to be longer. He's 7-1 in the UFC. With that 7-1 record, guys, he's getting a title shot. The UFC believes in him. He has crazy power. The guy doesn't look very powerful, kind of skinny, hits from weird angles, but when he catches people, they just go out. And I've seen it to where it's like tap, tap, and that third one will come and it'll be big. I've seen that, and he does have that touch, but man, when he unleashes that power, it knocks people out. I mean, you saw Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker went stiff. I mean, Johnny Walker went back. So Johnny Walker went, whoa, and went right back. I mean, this guy has power. Crazy power, crazy power. I do worry about his chin. I have worried about his chin in the past because he does float it up there sometimes. So I worry about that. He got taken down a lot. And really, that's where the crux of this fight comes about. Glover's obviously going to take him down. Jamahal has shown susceptibility to be taken down. So what's Jamahal done to shore up his takedown defense? And I mean, he's done a lot. This camp, he's done a lot. And he's really done a lot to work on his get-up game. And he works on his submissions, but even you'll hear him say, you haven't seen my submission game. Like, how are you giving Glover an edge in submissions? Like, you haven't seen my stuff yet. And he's extraordinarily cocky. Like, this is a guy who went up against Paul Craig and was like, I'm going to take him down. I don't care. Like, my BJJ is better. That's how confident I am. I'm going to be the next champ. If I can't take him down, like, I shouldn't be champion. So here we go. Took him down, got his arm dislocated or broken. It was awful, right? He was still trying to fight with his flailing arm. Like, it was crazy. Ref stopped it. It was done deal. He was like, what? This is not normal? Is this not? No? Why are you stopping the fight? So, needless to say, super cocky. He's not going to be that way here, though. He doesn't mind going to the ground, but I think he's turned a corner in his camp and in his mentality where he's like, look, this is for titles. I'm done playing around. Like, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to get a fast start every time. And it's caused him to be a fast starter. He does usually get knockouts pretty quickly. If not, he is working his way into looking at, all right, look, possibility. I'm going to be a 5-round fighter. The possibility is there. So I can't be out here blowing my load in round 1. I got to make sure that I can get into round 2, round 3, round 4. And we saw it in his last fight. I think he got a 4th round finish. And it was kind of impressive against an older gentleman, kind of like this one. At the same time, I mean, he got a ground and pound finish. That was just 3 months ago. And it was against Thiago Santos. I know Thiago Santos is a shell of himself today, but it's not like Thiago Santos is getting out here getting finished by people at this weight class. And Jamahal did it in the 4th round. So, yeah, man, I think this is going to be a great matchup. I think we're either going to get a submission from Glover Teixeira or a KO from Jamahal. Jamahal is going to come out fast, strong. Glover's going to be looking for the takedown. You guys are going to want to tune in Friday because I am going to have a bet on this fight. So get ready. Let's get into your next fight. All right, so let's get into your next fight. Your next fight is coming at you from the flyweight division for the flyweight championship of the world, guys. We have the 4th fight between these guys. Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. Let's look at the Deiveson Figueiredo side first. Deiveson is 35 years old. In the past, he's had some issues on the scales. In this current matchup, I think he's like 1-1-1. Like, he's 1-1. He's lost 1 by submission, and 1 went to a draw. Their first fight went to a draw. Every one of those fights was pretty close except for that submission loss. In that submission loss, he had a really bad weight cut. Everything looked good up until literally the walkout before. He had made a couple gestures, and I guess there was an adrenaline dump there, like a couple leading up to the cage. All that stuff. Super. It can kill some of your adrenaline, right? You're giving away some of your adrenaline. I talk to some fighters about this all the time. You have an adrenaline tank, all right? By doing all those motions prior to fight, dancing, all those different things, I know it makes you comfortable and I know it gets you hyped up and stuff, but you have to know that you have a meter. And every single time that you're putting yourself out there, expending some energy, with all these people, you don't even realize it, but that meter's... The only way to realize is if next time you don't do it and see like, God dang, I fight really good when I don't get all hyped up and crazy. So Deiveson was one of those guys. He went to Fight Ready, learned a lot of stuff, started to work his takedowns more. And I think that's what won him the last fight. If you look at it, that and some power. And that's what it boils down to for Deiveson Figueiredo. Deiveson Figueiredo's coming in here with all the power. Brandon Moreno, while he has power, he's not known for his power, right? Brandon Moreno's known for being tough. But Deiveson has power, and that's how he won the last fight. If you look at the last fight, he was being outstruck. He was getting beaten to the punch on a lot of things, but he's the one who went for surprise takedowns at some crazy times. It was kind of lucky, but also it's his skills that he was knocking Brandon down at the end of rounds and sometimes in the middle of rounds. But a lot of times for a judge, they're like, oh, knockdown. That's a check for that round, unless he gets a knockdown back or unless he just dominates the rest of the round. Pretty much lost that round. You can't get knocked down. If you get, that's why you see fighters that slip, get up right away and like, because they're trying to tell judges like, nah. He didn't knock me down. You know what I'm saying? So that is Deiveson Figueiredo's power. He has that power to just knock people down, and he kept doing that in the last fight, even though he got outstruck. But I mean, this is going to be round like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, like potentially, if it goes all 5 rounds. Like, these guys know each other inside and out. The problem with Deiveson is he is getting older. He's always had issues on the scales. Last camp, he really focused on his diet and really shored those things up. And I think it showed in the fight. He was able to, he's learned now that it takes a lot of dedication to get the weight cut properly, to get it down pat. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication. He's also learned that he has to manage his gas tank in there. He's not going to knock someone out in the first round all the time. That's not going to be the outcome in every fight. So he has to manage that tank throughout. So those are the two things that he's learned through this 4-fight trilogy. The problem is he's now getting older. Is the motivation factors there to do all the things he did last camp and more now that he's getting older? All the dietary restrictions. Those are the things that I need to find out this week if Deiveson's on point. Because if not, older, always had issues with this weight cut. If he comes in here a little bit lazy, has issues with the weight cut, we've seen how those fights go. You're looking at a draw, you're looking at a loss. When you're on point, when you do everything right, you win barely. Let's look at Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno, 29 years old. Brandon Moreno's the guy he's got a really good chin, but Deiveson has really good power. Brandon Moreno's going to be younger, taller. He has the volume advantage. Again, they're 1-1-1. The biggest concern for Brandon Moreno is he's coming from that James Krause camp when all that stuff happened with James Krause. And so he had to move to Fortis MMA. Based on a lot of things that I've seen and interviewing Brandon and talking to Brandon a couple times over the past month, he's done everything that he needs to do to move. He knew he had to move. When he did move, he went over there and said, look, guys, let's not change everything. Let's just add. Let's add to it. If you see something that needs to be changed, tweaked, maybe we call it tweaked, not changed, right? Tweaked. We'll talk about it. Let's get together. My team is now coming in with your team, and we're just going to integrate well. So far, it's been done pretty well. This week, it's going to get tested. This week, new camp, new people. Now, I know Saif Saud, and Saif Saud's a guy who he doesn't pull punches. He's going to tell you how it is. So I don't expect Saif Saud to pull punches, but there's some coaches out there that if Brandon's messing up, hey, now they have a potential champion under there. They become yes men. He's not one of those people. So I expect Brandon to come in here properly, but you got to know that not having James Krause there after you've won with James Krause and you really feel like he's the key to get you to that next level, not having him now moving somewhere else, it's a lot of pressure or a little bit of pressure on him. So, but at the end, man, this comes down to this week. That's what it boils down to. The motivation of Deiveson Figueiredo, because Deiveson Figueiredo could have been saying everything, could be looking amazing, saying everything, but it's not until we dig deeper to find out how's this weight looking for Deiveson Figueiredo? How'd this camp look? What did he work on more in depth towards this week? Like, you get to see those things as these fighters warm up and train. You get to sort of see like, oh man, they're working guillotine choke defense. All right. So this week we're really gonna be able to see everything that happens. There should be workouts. There should be a lot of things. So again, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. The UFC is looking forward to going back to Brazil, and this you can sort of see that they're setting up 2 big title fights with Brazilians on there, and it's going to be a hell of a show. Brandon's going to have to fight in Brazil. So, all right, guys. This matchup, again, is going to come down to the scales this week. You're going to want to check out on Friday because on Friday, by Friday afternoon, I'll have everything broken down in this fight and exactly how it went, and you'll get more in-depth there. So stick around on Friday. Pick up that package, okay? All right, let's get into your next fight. All right, so let's get into your next matchup. It's going to come at you from the welterweight division, 170 pounds, guys. We have Gilbert Burns versus Neil Magny. One thing you'll be interested in learning is that Gilbert Burns is actually older than Neil Magny. Whenever we talk about Neil Magny fights, we're always like, oh, but his age, he's getting up there in age. Well, guess what? Gilbert Burns is also getting up there in age. Let's look at the Gilbert Burns side. Gilbert Burns is going to be at a 9-inch reach disadvantage, but he's no dummy. I was pleasantly surprised by Gilbert Burns and his new approach to fighting. He really wants to win fights. I know that's crazy, but he's no longer allowing his ego to dictate things. So if he has a wrestling and BJJ advantage, he's going to be trying to approach the fight taking that advantage. So I expect Gilbert Burns to do the exact same thing he did to Stephen Thompson, look for takedowns, look to work his BJJ. He knows Neil Magny's been submitted a few times in his career. And at the end of the day, I think the line here started off at like minus 250 Gilbert Burns, and now it's just jumped to like minus 400. I think a lot of people are seeing a lot of the same things. Gilbert Burns is more dangerous. He has more weapons. He has more power. He's better submission-wise. I don't necessarily, and this is what the worry is, I don't know if his wrestling is up to par to Neil Magny's wrestling defense. Now let's get into Neil Magny. Neil Magny's 35 years old, so he's a year younger. He's the one who's going to have the 9-inch reach, and he's going to be taller. But the problem with Neil Magny in the past is he's been susceptible to takedowns, and he can be taken down. He has been submitted in the UFC, like I said before, but he comes in with a lot of UFC experience, and that UFC experience as an underdog, he cashes more than a lot of people. We're talking about like big underdogs. Like people have been counting out Neil Magny for years. And then when he's a favorite, when people are like, oh, it's time for the Neil Magny train, let's hop on, he lays an egg. So in this matchup, he's being brought in not to lose, but to compete. And in turn, a lot of people are expecting him to lose. Those are the spots Neil Magny either makes close or wins. But I like the intangibles of Neil Magny. I like the fact that Neil Magny is taller. I like the fact that he's longer. I like the fact that he can hit crazy submissions from other angles. He's a grinder. He likes to put people up against the cage. He likes to wear on people. And I think that's important here because Gilbert Burns has been a person who can be worn on. He's a person that can gas. He's worked on that. Says he shorted up, but I swear to you, when Gilbert Burns gets tired, Gilbert Burns gets reckless and he allows himself to be knocked out. And that is the major concern over there, especially knowing that Neil Magny is a grinder, huge underdog. As an underdog, Neil Magny cashes. It's like it was like the meme for the longest time until he ended up losing as an underdog. But for the longest time, it was like, oh wait, Neil Magny favorite, pass. Neil Magny underdog, max. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how it was for a long time. Not like that anymore, let's just say. In this matchup, I do expect Gilbert Burns to be the better fighter. Magny has a lot of this UFC experience, so the value being there on his side because he can change in a fight. He has been shown to change a game plan. He has been shown that when someone has a wrestling advantage that he pushes them up against the cage and gets up right away and forces them to work. And that's his whole thing, war through attrition. That's exactly what Neil Magny is all about. And while Gilbert Burns is the better athlete, he's a better BJJ expert. He's the guy who is going to be looking for takedowns from the start. Neil Magny is going to be smothered in this fight. That's what I'm expecting. For that fighter, he's going to be better, so I would favor him to win. I would favor him to even win inside the distance, knowing how bad Neil Magny has allowed himself to be submitted in the past. But I think this one's going to be a little bit closer than you think. I think it's going to be close until it's not. It's going to be close until Burns lands a submission or lands a knockout. Before then, I expect Neil Magny to wear on Gilbert Burns. He expects that Burns' gas tank isn't there. So he's just got to... He's got to wait out those rounds and survive, and hope that his game plan works out. Still might not, because Gilbert Burns could be coming in super in shape, could be coming in perfect. Neil Magny knows Gilbert Burns is coming off of a layoff. So at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Gilbert Burns' BJJ and Neil Magny's ability to get up and make the fight, drag the fight into deeper waters. I don't necessarily trust Neil Magny, though. Burns to me is the side now at this price line. Ooh, ugly. But Burns, you can play with that a little bit. Submission inside the distance. You can start looking into some of those props because I do believe he gets it. So let's get into your next matchup. All right, let's get into that next breakdown. Your next breakdown is coming at you from the flyweight division, but in the women's MMA department, we have Jessica Andrade versus Lauren Murphy. Let's talk about the Jessica Andrade side first. We're talking about KO power. The girl's 31 years old, short, stocky, and knows how to get to your chin, knows how to get you down to the ground, knows what needs to be done to win fights. Look at her losses, guys. Her losses, she's losing to just the best of the best. Former champions. We're looking Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Warlley, Rose. Who else has beaten Jessica Andrade? I mean, maybe... Shevchenko, right? We're talking about only champions are beating Andrade. Andrade is She's a compact fighter who knows how to fight, knows how to put punches together. The issue with Andrade, and I've always worried about it, was her chin. In her last fight, she ended up fighting Amanda Lemos, and I think a lot of people had money on Amanda Lemos inside the distance because of the things that Jessica Andrade has been known to do or is susceptible to. So we're looking at some big power shots. We know that Amanda Lemos has that. But Jessica Andrade went out there and she showed a different type of fight. She's no longer about going out there and trying to get the war, trying to knock your block off. Don't get me wrong. Leave your block out there. She'll knock it. But she's not looking to do that every time. She's going out there. She's trying to take people down. She remembers back in the day when she was extraordinarily successful before she started knocking girls out left and right. How did she do it? Just mauling girls, taking them down, just elbow, just being vicious, but doing it with a ground and pound. So we get to see a little bit more of her submission game, ground and pound. I think we're going to see a little bit of everything from Andrade, but the KO power is still there. And that's why you're going to see this line just be crazy in her favor. Look at the losses. Again, guys, she's only losing to champions or former champions. I mean, it is nuts. Lauren Murphy is 29 years old. I love Lauren Murphy because she's made us a ton of money, guys. We bet Lauren Murphy by decision. We bet her as a huge underdog. I mean, I probably owe my whole backyard to Lauren Murphy because the girl's good. The girl. No, let's just go back. Let's backtrack a little bit. Let's not say she's good. She's durable. She's there, and she mixes things up enough to win fights. Now, looking at her style, she's a grinder. She likes to get fights. She likes to mix things up, get fights to the ground, but she's slow, man. You watch her strike, and it's slow, but powerful, and she's going to be there. That's at the end of the day, I think that's one thing you can say about Lauren Murphy. She's going to be there. I did worry about Lauren Murphy's chin a little bit because looking at her going up against the champion, Shevchenko. But in that camp, Lauren Murphy had some health issues, and when she did get finished, she got finished in the 4th round. It was kind of a weird finish, but Lauren Murphy went in there not 100%. And it showed. She's coming into this fight having trained at Elevation Fight Team in Colorado with Rose Namajunas, and she changed some things up. You're going to be looking at a Lauren Murphy who is going to come out here hungry and ready to apply new skills. Now, if she applies new skills like a baby deer, girl's going to lose. You can't apply new skills like a baby deer. In other words, you can't apply new skills out there and be all wobbly and be all like, oh, look at this jab. It's new. Ooh. You can't do that, right? You have to have practiced that in the gym so much that your new jab is crisper than your old jab. That's how it is. That's how you know that a person isn't just willy-nilly training here and there. Just, armbar. I learned this week. Look at this, the way I transition this armbar. And it's sloppy as hell, and then they end up not getting it. And then losing position and giving up something, or that can happen. But with Lauren Murphy in this camp, it seems like she's taking it seriously. She's applying brand new things, smaller things into her camp that are going to help elevate her and get her to a new level. And I think we get to see it here. I just wish this fight with Andrade was happening maybe the next fight for Lauren Murphy, because I'd like to see Lauren Murphy apply some of the skills she's learning, some of her new skills she's learning, and really apply them to where they're comfortable for her in a cage. Guys, this thing it's crazy. This MMA thing, you can learn a technique and just nail it in the gym constantly. So suddenly bright lights are going. You don't feel right. You cut weight. Your adrenaline's a little off. You're sore. You're hurting everywhere. And then you got to go out there and fight. Moving to Elevation Fight Team, I'd like to have seen her implement some of those things a little bit more. I'd like to have seen her implement some of those regimens a little more so that she could have been more comfortable with them, right? But hey, it is what it is. At the end of the day, Lauren Murphy's tough. I expect Andrade to win. I just do. I expect Andrade to win just now, looking at everything. But I also know how tough Lauren Murphy is. So on Friday, you guys are going to listen to the write-up or hear the write-up or just read the conclusion of the write-up, should I say, and see if there's anything on this fight. Because one thing I do find intriguing is like Lauren Murphy by decision is going to be big plus money. And that's how my outdoors got extended. So Lauren Murphy by decision has been very fruitful for us. I just don't know if it works out here. All right, guys, let's get into your next fight. All right, so let's get into your next matchup. Coming at you from the lightweight division, 205 pounds. We have Paul Craig versus Johnny Walker. Let's talk about the Paul Craig side first. Paul Craig, 35 years old. changed camps this camp and really working on his striking. The guy's a finisher. I think something like 7 out of 8 fights or 8 out of 8 fights have been finishes that are transpired in the UFC. He's either going out there and, I mean, mostly he's getting the submission, or sometimes he can do some work on the ground and pound too. But it's interesting because Paul Craig has submitted someone on this card, someone headlining this card, someone potentially winning a title, right? Paul Craig submitted him. Paul Craig has finished Ankalaev. I'm just saying, man, like, Paul Craig is a surprise. A lot of people just always count Paul Craig out. He's not necessarily, he's not a sexy pick. Like, he's not a sexy, he goes out there. He has a new contract now. Before he had retired, so that part wasn't sexy. New contract now, so he's fighting with this new vigor, change camps. But before, when you looked at Paul Craig, he would win fights because, like, Jamahal Hill would hit him and then or go to the ground with him. And that's what you have to watch out here with Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's fight IQ is as good as his coach's fight IQ. And his coach's fight IQ is pretty good. I mean, a lot of people want to meme on John Kavanagh, want to meme on SBG Ireland. But overall, Johnny Walker's coaches have prepared him to be able to fight this type of fight. But you just never know when you're in there. When you're in there and the adrenaline's rushing, is Johnny Walker going to follow Paul Craig up? Or is Johnny Walker going to, when Paul Craig tries to pull guard, is Johnny Walker going to get in his guard? I think it's going to be an interesting thing from Paul Craig. Having worked his stand-up, does he come in here and use more of his stand-up? Does he try to knock Johnny Walker out, knowing that Johnny Walker has a suspect chin? Because if that's the case, Paul Craig's going to leave himself so open to get hit. And if he goes to the ground, it's not like he's the best wrestler, right? He's going to be the smaller guy here. So how is he going to be able to take Johnny Walker down? Usually the way Paul Craig gets takedowns is like some stupid thing. Like you try to take him down, or he pulls you to the mat over him or on top of him, or sometimes like he'll spin, flip into just boom, I'm landing into a takedown. Like some of his takedowns are super surprise takedowns. So in this fight, he's going to be looking at Johnny Walker straight across, and he's ready to bring it. He's ready to make a new splash with this contract. He knows Johnny Walker has a softer chin. Paul Craig's thinking, man, I can get a highlight reel finish here. All right, so let's get into Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker's 30 years old. He's a little bit taller and longer. I think he's another guy who's finished like 5 out of 6 fights in the UFC, or 6 out of 6 fights. Probably 5 out of 6 fights, because he is trying to be, I remember he had a really boring fight, but he's really trying to be more cautious with that chin of his. He went from trying to be more cautious with that chin, turning in one of the most boring performances ever, when everyone thought for sure there was going to be a knockout in that fight. Turned in one of the most boring performances, then came out and said, you know what? I got to be safe, but I got to go out there and test my mettle when it comes to people. I got to put myself in the fire. And what ended up happening, Jamahal Hill just knocked him out in the first round. Like with an overhand right, just flatlined. I mean, Johnny Walker went stiff and then back, right? So, I mean, Johnny Walker's chin just isn't there. His ground game isn't necessarily there. He's a little bit longer, and I've seen him roll on the ground. He's at a gym that is a primarily grappling gym, but he does do well on the ground. But against a guy like Paul Craig's a submission ace when it comes to a subsect of submissions that he has in his arsenal. So he knows how to apply them well. He knows how to hit them, and he knows how to catch them from all areas. He practices them constantly. Johnny Walker's a guy who has knockout power and likes to start off fast, but again, he's been changing his style up a little bit to try to gain some longevity. I think in this fight, though, he's going to come out here. He's going to try to strike. He's going to try to catch Paul Craig. He knows Paul Craig doesn't have the best chin. He knows Paul Craig is hittable. The same thing, Paul Craig knows Johnny Walker doesn't have a great chin. So at the end of the day, this fight is going to be fun. I mean, I expect it to be a banger. We're talking about grappler versus striker, a dynamic striker with no chin, and grappler with an okay chin. But man, at the end of the day, I think you're going to end up seeing Johnny Walker favored here, and I am tempted currently to take Paul Craig inside the distance. I worry about, a lot of people are going to tell you Paul Craig by submission. I worry about his camp this time, him working more of the stand-up. I worry about that he's going to go out there and say, look, I need a knockout. I want a standing knockout win for my reel. And Johnny Walker gives me a good chance. But at the end of the day, Johnny Walker also has a good chance to knock you out. So you got to watch out. I think Paul Craig, I think Paul Craig by late submission is a possible play, but again, I have to see how these guys are going to be this week. You guys are going to want to tune in Friday for that write-up. All right, guys. That's going to be your early look into UFC 283. Now, if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and turn your post notifications on. Let's comment down below UFC 283 so that I know you guys are listening. I want to see those comments down below. And I'm telling you guys, like last Saturday, we killed it. Killed the UFC. Another max fight pick win, back to back. This time, I'm expecting this card. I'm dedicated, motivated. I'm sitting here doing all the work when it comes down to getting these fights and breaking them down and making sure we get winners every year. I got to step it up. Every year is a new thing because Saturday is going to be a great day to win. So let's get it.